I was coming home from deployment, my first Christmas with family in years. My father texted, "Christmas is better without you. Don't come." I replied with a single word, "Understood." Then I made a few quiet changes online. 48 hours later, my phone blew up. One call was from their lawyer. "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Carol, and this is the story of the last Christmas I ever tried to spend with my family. You know, there's a certain kind of quiet on an army base in Germany just before the holidays. A stillness. The air gets sharp, smells like pine and diesel, and you start seeing the flickering lights go up in the windows of the family housing units. For the guys with wives and kids here, it's a happy time. For the rest of us, it's a reminder of how far away home really is. I'm Carol. I'm 28 years old, a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. For the last year, Germany had been my home, but my real home, or what I thought was my real home, was a small town in Oregon I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. It wasn't because I didn't want to go back. I did. Desperately. But there are only so many times you can fly halfway across the world, spend your entire leave and a chunk of your savings, just to feel like a guest in your own childhood bedroom. You know that feeling? Like you're a ghost at your own dinner table. Still, this year, I had hope. It's funny, isn't it? You'd think someone trained in tactical risk assessment would know better than to keep betting on people who consistently let you down. But I guess I'm human before I'm a soldier. And humans, we hope. Even when we probably shouldn't. When my Christmas leave was approved, I felt a jolt of pure, childish excitement. I hadn't been home for the actual holiday since I enlisted at 19. I started picturing it all. I saw my mom, maybe getting a little teary-eyed when I walked through the door, a real hug, not one of those stiff, pat-on-the-back things. I pictured my dad, Frank, handing me a cold beer from the fridge without making some weird comment about it. I even had this ridiculous fantasy that my younger sister, Brenda, might actually ask me about my life, maybe about the recent promotion I'd gotten, instead of just launching into her latest car trouble or complaining about her job. The hope felt so real, I did something stupid. I booked the flight. Non-refundable. I guess a part of me believes in miracles, even after everything. I sat on my bunk, the springs groaning in protest, and pulled out my phone. My fingers hovered over my mom's name. I typed out the message, my heart thumping a little too fast. Got leave. I'll be home for Christmas. Can't wait to see everyone. I hit send. A few minutes later, her reply came. It wasn't words. Just a little red heart emoji. I stared at it, trying to convince myself it meant everything I wanted it to mean. A heart is good, right? It means love. Affection. Welcome. I decided to take it as a win. For the next few days, I let myself live in that fantasy. I imagined the smell of my mom's pot roast, the sound of the local radio station playing Christmas carols, the warmth of the fireplace. I let myself believe that the people I'd been sending half my salary home to every single month might actually want me there, not just the money that came with my name on a bank transfer. I let myself believe that this time, it would be different. The bubble I'd built around myself burst exactly 12 days before Christmas. I was standing in the base mess hall, halfway through a protein bar that tasted like sweetened cardboard. It was that weird, quiet time in the mid-afternoon. A few soldiers were scattered around, lost in their own worlds. Outside, a light, gray snow was beginning to fall. It was almost peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. It was on the table next to my tray, face up. My dad's name lit up the screen. Frank. I smiled, thinking maybe he was calling to talk about flight times. I picked it up. It wasn't a call, it was a text. I opened it. The words were short, blunt, and they hit me with the force of a physical blow. Christmas is better without you. Don't come. I read it once. Then twice. My brain couldn't quite process it. It had to be a joke, right? My dad had a rough sense of humor. Or maybe a typo. Maybe he meant to send it to someone else. I stood there, motionless, the stale protein bar clutched in my hand, just staring at those 7 words. The background chatter of the mess hall faded into a dull roar in my ears. I felt a cold dread begin to creep up my spine. Before I could even begin to form a response, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was my sister, Brenda. Her text was somehow even worse. It'll just make things awkward if you show up. Please don't. That one landed. It wasn't just a rejection, it was an explanation that made it hurt more. Awkward. Like I was some ex-boyfriend they were trying to avoid at a party, not their own daughter, their own sister. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. It confirmed my dad's message wasn't a joke. This was planned. They had talked about it. They had decided, together, that I wasn't welcome. I slowly sat down at the empty table, my legs suddenly weak. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just felt hollow. A familiar, aching emptiness spread through my chest. I thought about yelling, about demanding an explanation, about listing all the things I'd done for them, all the money I'd sent, all the sacrifices I'd made. But what was the point? They had made their feelings perfectly clear. Arguing wouldn't change their minds. It would only give them more ammunition, more reason to call me dramatic or difficult. So I didn't. I took a deep breath, the way they teach you to do before you qualify at the rifle range. Steady your hands. Control your breathing. Focus. I typed back a single word to both of them, in separate messages. Understood. I'd like to tell you I didn't feel anything. That I was a tough soldier, used to hardship, and that their words bounced right off my armor. But that would be a lie. The kind of lie soldiers tell themselves so they can get through the night. The truth is, my heart broke. Not in a loud, dramatic movie way. It broke in that quiet, terrible way where you feel something inside you shift, a foundational piece of who you are, and you know, with absolute certainty, that it will never shift back. I sat in that mess hall for I don't know how long. An hour? Maybe 2. The afternoon faded into a bleak, early evening. The snow was coming down harder now. I watched people come and go, laughing, talking about their holiday plans, and I felt like I was behind a wall of glass, completely disconnected from the world. The hurt was still there, a raw, open wound. But as the minutes ticked by, something else started to surface. Not anger, not yet. Not a desire for revenge. Just clarity. A cold, hard, and absolute clarity. For years, I had been operating under a set of unwritten rules. Family helps family. You're the one doing well, so you have to help. Don't rock the boat. Just send the money and keep the peace. Now, they had just taken those rules, ripped them up, and thrown them in my face. And in doing so, they'd set me free. They just didn't know it yet. That night, back in my barracks room, I didn't try to sleep. I turned on my laptop. The little green power light seemed to mock the darkness in the room. I didn't look at old photos or read old emails. I opened a web browser and logged into my bank account. My name still lived in so many parts of their lives, woven into the financial fabric of their home. First, there was the joint utility account for their house. I'd agreed to cover it temporarily when my dad was between jobs 3 years ago. The temporary arrangement had somehow become permanent. My name was on it, my bank account was linked to it. With a few quiet clicks, I removed my payment information and initiated the process to have my name taken off the account entirely. Next, Brenda's car insurance. It had been quietly billed to my credit card for the last 18 months, ever since she'd lost her job at the salon. She'd promised to pay me back. She never did. I navigated to the insurer's website, logged into the portal, and deleted my card as the primary payment method. An email notification would be sent to her, effective immediately. And then, the big one. The mortgage. I was never on the deed to that house, but my credit score and my steady army salary were the reason they'd gotten the loan approved after my dad's layoff wrecked his financial standing. I wasn't an owner, but I was the invisible crutch holding the whole thing up. Every month, a significant portion of my paycheck went straight to that mortgage payment. I went to the payment portal, a site I knew as well as my own email, and shut down the auto-transfer. Just to be sure, the next morning, I made a formal call. I sent a follow-up email to the mortgage servicer, a carefully worded message stating that as of this date, I would no longer be contributing financially to the loan and that all future communications should be directed to the primary borrower, my father, Frank. A representative called me back within the hour. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice tinged with professional concern. "A change like this may trigger a refinancing requirement or a disruption in payment. It could affect your father's loan status." I stood by the window in my room, watching the snow blanket the training grounds. "I'm sure," I said, my voice even and calm. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching someone else make these decisions. "Very well," she said. I hung up the phone. It was done. All the invisible threads that tied my finances to their lives had been cut. Silently. Cleanly. No drama. Just a series of quiet, deliberate clicks. And as I stood there, a feeling washed over me. It wasn't happiness. It was control. For the first time in years, I was in control of my own life. Here's the part that's hard to explain. The part that probably sounds crazy. After everything, the texts, the rejection, cutting them off, I still got on the plane. Yeah, I know. They told me not to come. They made it crystal clear I wasn't welcome. But the ticket was booked, non-refundable, and a stubborn, sad part of me needed to see it through. It felt like I had to complete the mission, even if the objective had changed. I wasn't going home to see my family anymore. I was going home to say goodbye to the idea of them. I needed to be there, in that town, one last time, even if I never set foot in that house again. The flight was surreal. It was packed with people heading home for the holidays. College kids laughing, families trying to corral excited children, older couples holding hands. Everyone was buzzing with an energy I couldn't share. I put on my headphones, turned the music up as loud as it would go, and stared out the window at the endless expanse of clouds, feeling completely and utterly alone. I landed 2 days before Christmas. The air in Oregon was cold and damp, a familiar chill that went right through my jacket. I didn't call anyone. I didn't rent a car. I just got in a taxi and gave the driver the address of a budget motel off the interstate, the kind of place with thin walls, mystery stains on the curtains, and a faint smell of stale cigarettes and air freshener. The room was bleak. A lumpy bed, a bolted-down TV, and a window that looked out over the highway and a gas station. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed. I could hear the muffled sounds of a family in the next room, a kid squealing with laughter. It was a sharp, painful reminder of what I didn't have. For a while, I just sat there, staring at the town I used to know. The Christmas lights on the lampposts, the same old stores on Main Street, the same cold wind blowing through the bare trees. Everything looked the same, but I felt different. I didn't feel like I belonged here anymore. I felt like a tourist in my own past, a stranger who had overstayed her welcome in her own life. I didn't drive by the house. I didn't text anyone to let them know I was in town. I just bought a sandwich and a soda from the vending machine down the hall, went back to my room, and waited. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. But I knew something was coming. The financial changes I'd made would be hitting their accounts right about now. The first of the month was just around the corner. The silence wouldn't last. It started the next morning. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, nursing a cup of terrible motel coffee, when my phone, which had been silent for days, started buzzing nonstop. The first wave was small. A missed call from my dad. Then another. A voicemail from an unknown number. Then a call from Brenda at 11:49 p.m. the night before, which I'd slept through. I imagined that one was just late enough to be annoying, but early enough to still seem dramatic. I didn't listen to any of the voicemails. I just watched the notifications pile up. I wasn't avoiding them out of spite, not really. It was simpler than that. I didn't owe them an immediate response. I was done dropping everything the moment they needed something. I was done being their emergency contact. Then came the second wave, before I'd even finished my coffee. 7 missed calls before noon. 1 from the house landline. 3 from Frank's cell. 2 more from Brenda. And then 1 from a number I didn't recognize, labeled Callaway and Green Law Office. That one got my attention. I put my coffee down, the cheap ceramic clinking against the nightstand. I stared at the caller ID, my heart starting to beat a little faster. A law office. So, they weren't just angry. They were escalating. This was their next move, intimidation. They weren't going to talk to me themselves, they were going to have a professional do it for them. Curiosity finally won. I took a deep breath and pressed play on the voicemail. A man's voice, smooth and professional, filled the quiet room. Miss Morgan, this is Nathan Callaway, counsel for your parents, Frank and Mary Morgan. I've been informed that you have ceased financial contributions connected to a jointly financed home. They are, understandably, distressed. I would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience before this creates further complications. Complications. I muttered the word out loud to the empty room. Right. My self-respect was a complication. My refusal to be their personal bank was a disruption. They weren't distressed when I was missing holidays and birthdays, wiring money from another continent. No, they were distressed now. Now that the money had stopped. I didn't call back. I wasn't interested in being managed or guilt-tripped by a stranger they'd hired. I knew exactly how this game worked. They'd turn their manufactured concern into a lecture about duty and family, hoping I'd fold before they had to face the actual consequences of their own actions. Instead, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, pulled on my boots, and went for a walk. The snow had stopped, leaving a thin, gray slush on the sidewalks. The sky was overcast, the color of concrete. My hometown hadn't changed much, but I had. I walked past the bakery where Brenda got caught shoplifting once, and I was the one who had to bike across town to bail her out so Dad wouldn't find out. She thanked me by not speaking to me for a week because I'd ruined her vibe. I let out a short, sad laugh. It was the kind of laugh that felt more like an exhale with old, painful memories attached to it. I was finally seeing it all clearly. Walking through the frozen streets of my hometown, the memories started flooding back. There wasn't one big, dramatic event that made me the outsider in my own family. It was more like a slow accumulation of moments, a death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was 1,000 tiny reminders that I was useful, but not essential. Present, but not central. It really started when Brenda was born. I was 8. She came into the world red-faced and screaming, and my parents treated her like she had descended from heaven on a private cloud. My dad, Frank, called her his miracle baby, which always made me wonder what that made me. The warm-up act? The trial run? I was a quiet kid. Not moody or difficult, just low maintenance. I read books for hours, I lined up my little green army men in perfect formations, I got good grades. Nobody ever had to worry about me. And in my family, not needing help meant not getting attention. My dad worked as a foreman at the steel plant back then. He was a big personality, loud laugh, strong opinions, and a firm belief that emotions were a weakness, unless it was his own anger. If I cried, he'd tell me to knock it off. If I got quiet, he'd call me dramatic. If I got mad, he'd tell me to stop acting like a girl, which was pretty ironic, considering I was one. My mom was gentler, but in a vague, foggy kind of way. She was the type to forget parent-teacher conferences for me, but never miss Brenda's ballet recitals. She'd lose track of my soccer practice schedule, but always remembered Brenda's favorite snacks. I wasn't unloved, not exactly. I was just unnoticed. Unless I did something wrong. Then, suddenly, everyone noticed. The dynamic was set early. Brenda was the squeaky wheel that always got the grease, and I was the quiet, steady axle that was expected to just keep turning, no matter the load. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job pumping gas at the local station. I saved every single dollar. I had this dream of buying a beat-up old car and just driving, maybe until the world started to feel bigger than my small town. But 1 month in, my dad said he needed to borrow my savings to fix a leak in the roof. The roof never got fixed, but Brenda's sweet 16 party had a DJ and catered cupcakes. I never saw that money again. When I brought it up, my dad just grunted and said, "It's called helping your family, Carol. You should try it sometime." So, at 19, I joined the army. Nobody tried to stop me. Frank just said, "Figures." My mom cried, but it felt performative. Like it was the thing a mom was supposed to do. Brenda didn't say anything at all. Boot camp was hell, but it made sense to me. There were rules. There were expectations. If you worked hard, you earned respect. You were part of a team, a unit. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly had a place. Meanwhile, back home, things started to fall apart, and I was the last to know. I found out my dad had been laid off from the plant when my mom posted a GoFundMe link on Facebook. The caption was, "Hard times trying to stay afloat. Every little bit helps." It was humiliating. I didn't even think about it. I just logged into my military bank account and wired them $2,000, a huge chunk of my savings. My dad didn't say thank you. He just texted, "That should cover this month. Let me know when you can send more." And just like that, a new precedent was set. The Bank of Carol was officially open for business. After that, it became a routine. The power bill was late. The car needed new tires. Then, it was the mortgage. There was always a reason, always a crisis, always a sigh from my mom and a guilt trip from my dad. "It's not forever," they'd say. "You're the only one in the family doing okay." At 22, Brenda crashed her second car. I paid the insurance deductible and helped her get a used SUV. Her thank you was a one-word text, THX. A month later, she posted a picture of it on Instagram with the caption, "When you work hard, you earn your rewards." I didn't say anything. I just took a screenshot and saved it in a folder on my laptop I called Unpaid Debts and Unsaid Things. The last time I visited for Christmas, 4 years ago, they barely looked up when I walked in. My old bedroom was filled with storage boxes. I slept on the couch. At dinner, my dad raised a glass and toasted Brenda for being the one who always shows up. The next morning, there was no gift under the tree for me. Just a cheap mug they'd picked up at a gas station that said "Grumpy Vet." Everyone laughed. "It's a joke, Carol," my mom said. I just smiled. That's what you do when your own family thinks you're a punchline. That's when I stopped going back. But I kept sending the money. Until now. When I got back to the motel after my walk, the receptionist gave me a strange look. "The phone at the front desk has been ringing off the hook for you," she said, peering at me over her glasses. "You some kind of local celebrity?" "Something like that," I mumbled and headed upstairs. That night, I did what any emotionally stable, highly trained soldier would do. I bought a bottle of cheap whiskey from the gas station next door, sat in the dark, and rewatched old combat training videos on my laptop. Not because I missed deployment, but because it reminded me of who I was when I wasn't being used as a doormat. Around 1 a.m., the messages shifted. Until then, it had been outrage and confusion from my family. "What the hell, Carol? You can't just abandon us. We needed that money." But now, the tone changed. It became manipulative. A text from Brenda: "Mom's been crying all day. You're breaking her heart." Then one from my dad: "Your mother's not well. All this stress you're causing. I'm worried she's going to have a heart attack. This will be on you." And another from Brenda an hour later: "Dad says he's having chest pains. You're killing them with this silence, Carol." I actually raised my glass of whiskey to the ceiling. A silent toast to emotional manipulation, vintage 1995 and still going strong. I have to admit, I almost caved. Not because I believed them, I knew they were exaggerating for effect, but because it's what I was conditioned to do. Soothe. Solve. Carry the burden. My role in the family was to be the fixer. But then I remembered something my first commanding officer told me. "The silence you keep," he'd said, "is often louder and more powerful than anything you can say." So I kept it. I held my silence like a shield. By Christmas Eve morning, the messages had gone from dramatic to biblical. My mom posted a bunch of passive-aggressive Bible verses on her Facebook about forgiveness and honoring thy parents. Then Brenda delivered the knockout punch. She posted a family photo. My parents on the couch, smiling, with 3 Christmas stockings hanging on the fireplace behind them. Frank. Mary. Brenda. Mine wasn't there. It had been officially erased. The caption read: "Some people forget who fed them when they were starving. So grateful for the family that's actually here." And that's when I broke my silence. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't engage with their drama on their terms. I chose a different battlefield, the one they had just opened up. Social media. I spent the next hour on my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I created a new photo album on my own Facebook page. I titled it, "Just So We're Clear." The caption was simple: "Sometimes family isn't who you were born to. It's who doesn't ask for proof every time you say you're tired." Since there seems to be some confusion about my contributions to the family, here are the receipts. And then I uploaded the evidence. Screenshot after screenshot. Bank transfers to my dad's account, labeled mortgage, utilities, help. Insurance payments for Brenda's SUV, with her name and license plate clearly visible. Scanned copies of the mortgage statements showing the payments coming from my account. I blacked out my account numbers, of course. I wasn't reckless. But the dates, the totals, the descriptions, they were all there. Page after page of it. Years of it. No commentary. No angry rant. Just the cold, hard, undeniable facts. I hit post. The reaction was immediate and explosive. My phone, which I'd taken off Do Not Disturb, started buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets. Comments flooded in. But it was the private messages that were the most telling. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. "Carol, is this for real? You were paying for all that?" one wrote. "Your mom and dad always made it sound like you bailed on them after you joined the army." Another message, from an old high school friend: "I had no idea. Your sister is always posting about her new stuff. I just assumed she was doing really well. This is messed up." My mom's Facebook page went dark within the hour. Deleted or deactivated, I didn't know which. Frank changed his profile picture to one of him fishing. Classic avoidance. Brenda posted something vague and passive-aggressive about people who thrive on drama and airing dirty laundry. I didn't respond. I just watched it all unfold from my dingy motel room. At 6:32 p.m., I got a voicemail from Frank. His voice was low and shaking with rage. "You've gone too far, Carol. Too far. You humiliated us. I don't even know who you are anymore. You used to be loyal. Now you're just cruel. Congratulations. You've ruined Christmas." That was rich, considering I wasn't even invited to Christmas. Then, at 7:10 p.m., a final text from Brenda. "You made your point. They're freaking out. Mom's not eating. Dad's threatening to sell the house. Are you happy now?" I stared at the screen for a long time. Am I happy? No. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. I was sad for the family I wished I had. But for the first time, I was being honest. Honest with them and honest with myself. And that was something. Christmas morning came and went in a silent blur. No calls. No texts. No guilt bombs. Just the quiet hum of the motel mini fridge and the blinking light of a single unread voicemail. It was from the lawyer, Nathan Calloway, again. "Miss Morgan," his voice began, much less aggressive this time. "I've spoken with your parents. I think emotions are just running high right now. They would like to meet with you in person to discuss this. No pressure, of course, but I believe a calm, face-to-face discussion could resolve this matter." Resolve what, exactly? I thought. The decade of financial exploitation? The emotional gaslighting? Still, a part of me was curious. I wanted to see their faces when they had to talk to me without a screen to hide behind. I texted him back a time and a location. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. Denny's Diner off Route 12. Booth in the back. Neutral ground. Public setting. Less chance of them screaming. I spent the next day preparing. I went to a local print shop and printed out every document from my Facebook album. I organized them neatly in a folder, with tabs for each category: mortgage, utilities, Brenda's car, miscellaneous bailouts. I was coming to this meeting prepared. I was treating it like a mission briefing. The next evening, I arrived 10 minutes early. The diner was quiet, smelling of coffee and frying bacon. Holiday lights were still blinking around the windows. I chose a booth in the back, one where I could see the door. I ordered a black coffee and just waited. At exactly 6:03 p.m., they walked in. Frank, in his stiff jacket, his jaw set like stone. My mother, clutching her purse like a shield. And Brenda, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, which was either a bizarre fashion choice or a weak attempt to hide her red-rimmed eyes. They slid into the booth across from me. The silence was thick and heavy. Frank spoke first. "We don't want this to get any uglier than it already is." My mother chimed in, her voice fragile and trembling. "We're a family, Carol. We've all said things we didn't mean." Brenda sniffed. "But posting our private business online, that was low. Even for you." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Even for me? That's an interesting take. Frank's eyes narrowed. "You humiliated your mother. You humiliated this family." "No," I said, my voice flat and steady. "You did that to yourselves. I just stopped covering it up." Brenda's sunglasses slipped down her nose. "You didn't have to cut us off completely. That house." "That house," I interrupted, my voice still quiet but gaining a hard edge, "was being paid for by someone who wasn't allowed to set foot in it for Christmas. Let's not pretend this was about anything other than money. We came here to fix this." Frank's voice was rising, and he slammed his hand on the table, making the salt shaker jump. "But if you're going to just sit there and play the victim..." Nobody's playing anything, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I just stopped funding my own erasure. I reached into my coat, pulled out the folder, and slid it across the table. Since we're all here to be clear, let's be crystal clear. My mother opened the folder first. Her face, already pale, seemed to lose all its color. Frank snatched it from her, his face turning a deep, blotchy red as he flipped through the pages. Brenda just stared, her lips pressed into a line so thin it almost disappeared. We didn't ask for all of this, my mother whispered, gesturing vaguely at the papers. You didn't have to, I replied. You just expected it. Just as Frank opened his mouth to yell again, the little bell above the diner door jingled. I didn't have to look. I already knew who it was. My uncle, Arthur, walked in. He was my dad's older brother, a tall, quiet man who walked with a cane after a construction accident years ago. He had silver hair, sharp eyes, and an expression that could stop a charging bull. The entire booth froze. Well, Arthur said, his voice calm and steady as he approached our table. This looks cozy. Frank shot to his feet, panic flickering across his face. R.D. I didn't know you were in town. You never do, Frank, my uncle said, his eyes not leaving his brother's. That's part of your problem. He then turned his gaze to me, and his expression softened. Carol. Good to see you. I got your message. He looked back at my parents, then at Brenda. I heard about the texts you sent her. The lawyer. The crying. You always were a good actor, Frank. My dad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Funny thing, Arthur continued, leaning on his cane. When Carol visited me last year, on her way back to Germany, she never asked for a single thing. She helped me clean out my gutters, fixed my leaky faucet, and just talked to me. Like I mattered. And when I had that health scare back in the spring, she was the only one who showed up. Flew all the way from another continent on her own dime to sit with me in the hospital. Not one of you even called. My mother started to speak, but Arthur raised a hand. Save it, Mary. Then, he reached into his old wool coat and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. He dropped it on the table right in front of my dad. It landed with a heavy thud. My updated will, he announced to the silent table. Signed and notarized 2 weeks ago. Carol is the sole beneficiary. The sole heir to my entire inheritance. The silence that followed was nuclear. The house, the land, the savings, all of it. It all goes to her. Brenda's mouth fell open. You're joking. No, Arthur said, his voice like ice. I don't joke about consequences. He turned to me. I should have done this years ago, kid. I'm sorry I waited so long. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Uncle Arthur didn't stay for the fallout. He just gave me a small, sad smile, turned, and walked out of the diner. The only sound was the steady tap-tap-tap of his cane against the tiled floor. The three of them just sat there, stunned, staring at the envelope on the table as if it were a bomb. Frank looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Brenda was white as a sheet. My mother just kept blinking, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. The power dynamic in our family had just been permanently, irrevocably altered, and the shock of it was radiating off them in waves. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I pulled a few bills from my pocket and dropped them on the table to cover my coffee. Thanks for the meeting, I said quietly. My mother finally found her voice. Carol, please. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or hurt. I just felt pity. You made your decision, I said. This was mine. And right there, in that moment, with them staring at me in disbelief, I felt a shift. It was the end of one story and the beginning of another. My story. If you're still listening, if you followed me this far into the fluorescent lights of this sad little diner, could you do me a huge favor? Could you like this video, and just comment the number 1 down below? It lets me know you gave me a thumbs up, and that you're here with me on this journey. Your support means the world to me. Just comment the number 1, and then I'll tell you how I walked away. Frank finally snapped out of his shock. He surged to his feet, his face twisted in a mask of rage and disbelief. "So that's it," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You get a big payday from my brother and you're just going to walk out? After everything we did for you?" I stopped. I turned back to face him fully. I looked him dead in the eye, and all the years of fear and intimidation just evaporated. He was just a man. A sad, angry man who had lost control. "Everything you did for me?" I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "Let's be clear, Frank. You didn't do anything for me. You did things to me. You took from me. You used me. And now," I paused, letting the words hang in the air between us, "I'm done." I didn't wait for a reply. I turned my back on him, on my mother's silent tears, on Brenda's shocked face. I walked out of that diner, pushed open the glass door, and stepped out into the cold night air. The bell above the door jingled softly behind me, a sound that felt like a final, quiet goodbye. I didn't look back. As I walked across the parking lot, I got one last text message from Brenda. I pulled out my phone and read it under the orange glow of a streetlight. It just said, "I don't know who you are anymore." I didn't reply, but I whispered the answer to the empty, freezing air. "I'm someone who finally learned how to leave." 2 months later, I stood in the middle of Uncle Arthur's living room, surrounded by moving boxes. He had passed away peacefully in his sleep a few weeks after that night in the diner. His lawyer handled everything, the transfer of the estate, the inheritance, all of it. There were no challenges. No drama. Just a quiet transfer of ownership from a man who saw me to the woman who was finally understanding what being seen really meant. I'd taken a compassionate leave from the army to sort through his things. The house was small, old, and smelled of pipe tobacco and wood polish. It was quiet. But it wasn't the bad kind of silence, the one laced with guilt and tension. It was stillness. It was peace. The house was mine. Not because I'd earned it through obligation or guilt, but because someone believed I deserved more than just a life of survival. I found a photo on his mantel and decided it was the only one I needed to keep. It was of me and him, taken on that last visit. We were sitting on his porch, laughing about something I can't even remember now. But I remember the look on his face. It was pride. It was that rare, quiet kind of love that doesn't have to announce itself. It just shows up. I haven't spoken to my parents or Brenda since that night. After the will became public, there were a few desperate messages. Some begging, some accusing. I blocked their numbers. I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they share your blood. Sometimes, family is who drains you. And sometimes, freedom is what happens when you finally stop letting them. I'm not sure what I'll do next. Maybe I'll turn this house into something meaningful, a resting place for vets passing through. Or maybe I'll just live in it for a while. Learn how to exist without constantly bracing for the next emotional impact. Either way, I'm not looking back. The woman who flew to Oregon for Christmas isn't the same one standing in this living room today. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. Thanks for listening. Really. This story wasn't easy to tell, but I'm glad I did. And so, as the echoes of her steps faded into the cold night, we are left with a profound reminder: strength isn't always about holding on, it's often about knowing when to let go. Carol's journey invites us to reflect on the invisible chains we sometimes wear, forged by obligation, guilt, and the fear of disappointing those we love. Yet, her story shows us that true peace begins when we reclaim our worth, when we choose to stop sacrificing ourselves for relationships that drain us instead of lifting us. This isn't a tale of revenge or bitterness, it's one of courage and clarity. Carol didn't walk away to hurt her family, she walked away to heal herself. Her decision challenges us to examine our own lives and ask, are we living authentically, or are we merely surviving under the weight of others' expectations? In the end, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the freedom to live in alignment with our values, unapologetically. What about you? What does this story make you feel? Share your thoughts below, or simply comment good if this reflection resonates with you. Let's start a conversation about the strength it takes to choose yourself.